and it was all just going through my head, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, um, long story short, anyhow, um, I saw a lot of people passing by. I saw a girl who seemed roughly my age, who was like, she was a Disney employee, and she was like putting trash. She was like the trash person, just going to each trash can, and like, she had to like make sure every cigar was completely clean. So she had to like take every cigarette that was on the ashtray on top of every trash can, clean it up, make sure it's completely like void of flame by like pressing it on the ashtray, then throwing it into the trash, the huge cart she was carrying. Then she took her garbage and threw it into the cart. And I saw her do that constantly, and eventually I worked up the courage to talk to her, and she was like, you know what, I'm a university student and so forth. I didn't tell her what was going on with me, but I don't know. It just seemed like she was talking about how her whole family is coming down to see her, and I realized it was Christmas the next day, and it was Christmas Eve night, and um, I don't know. After that, that still didn't convince me. I sat there for a few more hours. My parents didn't know where I was, just thinking it through. And I was thinking it through, and I'm like, I'm seriously considering, like, regardless of that, I'm still considering doing this, but I'm just not sure. And I'm just like, is this a strong enough reason? And long story short, it was like midnight. The park had closed down for a couple hours already. My mom found me, and I was still not. I still hadn't decided yet. Like I was still considering this stuff. And she found me, and I didn't want to talk to her still, and I was still walking away. Then she talked to a police officer, or like this Disney police security guy. And this was all outside of Epcot. I eventually had to just walk out of there because the park was closing down. So I was sitting on a bench outside, and he comes up to me, and I'm about to tell this guy, look, I'm a grown man. I'm 21 years old. Um, it's a long story. It's not just this thing. My mom has, you know, placed tyranny on me for the longest time, and I think it's time for me to escape the den. Anyhow, before I can say anything, I realize he's quite old and he's still working. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was that sense of pity again, or sympathy. But he's pretty old, and he's white. Next thing is he starts talking to me, and he talks to me like an equal, um, which is something I respect. Um, he wasn't talking down to me like some white people do. He wasn't talking up to me like others do. He was just talking to me like I was just a person, regardless of race, class, distinction, whatever. And he was old, so he was really old. It was Christmas Eve, and he was still working as a security officer. A pretty tall, skinny dude. And he says, just long story short, he says something like, I don't like to meddle in things, but your mom's cold, and it's nighttime, and tomorrow's Christmas. Come on. Long story short, that's what he said. And I thought about it, and I'm like, just because it's Christmas, I'm just gonna go. And a lot of you people might just take this tale as spoiled brat, can't take a hint, gets easily upset, high temper, and threatens to do stuff that he would never actually do. In certain ways, that's true. I'm gonna be humble. I think in certain ways it's true throughout my life, yes. But I never threatened anything. What I was thinking about was all in my mind. Um, I did maybe I mentioned that I was thinking about just literally running away and just living a life in Florida. And I thought about, like, I envisioned my years to come from doing that. And I envisioned it like the next 10 years of my life. I'd be probably working minimal wage for a lot of it. Um, and eventually working to finish up my college degree and living in Florida and refusing to communicate or make contact with my family and just living that life. And I envisioned the next couple months and just me begging people to find a job and then like crying myself to sleep. And I thought the reason wasn't strong enough. And it just wasn't worth it. It was Christmas, and I'm just gonna let this one pass. So I went home, and long story short, for the next week or so, there were moments when I'm just like, wow, everything's back to normal. We're laughing again. We're just having a decent time. Um, what would have happened if anything else happened? It would, in some alternate dimension or universe, things could have easily been very different. You know, refusing to talk or make any contact with my family for years, missing out on my siblings growing up, and then seeing them again if I ever choose to come back. Um, Having a lot of things that are advantageous to me, like my parents paying for my college and housing and so forth. I don't know about that, but finding a job, a lot of stuff. Um, and that was one of the big things about this whole thing. Like, I was angry because I felt like I had to somehow prove myself, because I don't think my family, my parents would have even. At the time I thought they probably were thinking something like, oh, there's no way he would do that anyways. He doesn't have the skill or ability to do that. And I was actually thinking of proving myself. I was 21, and I'm still 21, so that was the whole thing. And whether I could have or couldn't have, it's just not worth it. Putting my honor aside, sure, I'm still working through it. You know, I still have issues with my parents and stuff. You know, um, I'm not gonna lie. Some people say they have perfect lives. That ain't me. But I'm working through it, and yeah, my parents. You know, a lot of times there are a lot of things that that have happened that make me think that uh, I want to get away from this place, and they're just too controlling, and I can never be independent, and whatever. But you know, we got back, and we finally were able to open our Christmas presents on New Year's after we got back from Disney World, and I didn't get anything too big or special. But at the same time, I got a lot of cash, just straight up cash. And I don't know, I guess there's certain moments when, you know, I'm just like, I'm glad I took this route. Who knows what would have happened otherwise? Who knows what would have happened if that officer didn't say what he said? Um, and it's just really not worth all that stuff for honor or pride and so forth. And that's one of the things I said quite a few times after that ordeal. I said the reason wasn't strong enough for me to do this, and it wasn't, and that's why I didn't do it, and that's why I went back home. And a lot of stuff I'm still working through. I'm not going to go through the details with you, but that's about it. That's my big story of the day. Long story short, in some alternate universe, I'm probably working as a Disney employee somewhere, maybe sweeping floors or in one of the restaurants or one of the kiosks selling food, and potentially crying myself to sleep, making friends, semi begging, semi just very gracious for those potential Disney employees that I met who are sort of like supporting me and giving me housing. And then I feel like the rest of that alternate universe guy's life is it's probably pretty bad, you know. Next 10 years of his life, no contact with his family because he can't put down his head and just humble himself and put aside his pride and just make contact with his family again. And I think that's a big thing. For me, it's a lot worse than a lot of other people will ever experience. But I feel like family in general, there's a lot of things you probably will hate about them, and I'm not gonna get into it. But it's really not worth it at the end of the day. Like, what is there to prove? Define why you're doing this? Is it for happiness? Is that happiness because of your lack of independence or so forth? Define happiness. Because, I mean, isn't family and having contact with them, regardless of the things that annoy you uh, regarding them, isn't that part of happiness as well? That's really up to you. I think it is subjective, but I feel like if I had gone through that other stuff, and I'd probably be chasing a lot of the things I thought of, which potentially would have given me happiness, which would be independence from my controlling family, finally being able to travel and live and experience one of these great places that I always wanted to, Florida and California. In this example, Florida, being independent and just living in that place. And I feel like what I would have found would be, it wouldn't have been that great as I thought, and I'd be like, I'd probably be screwed over. But I don't know. I'm definitely not saying right now is perfect or it's great at all. There's still a lot of stuff I'm working through. It's kind of crazy, but time flew very fast, and I'm actually graduating college now, and I gotta find a job. I still feel like a kid, so I don't know what kind of job, which, I mean, I know my major, but I don't know if that's my passion. I don't know if I'll find a passion that's related to something I can get income doing. But that's a story for another ordeal. Um, and yeah, that's life. But we're all working through it, and the biggest thing though is just enjoy it. Just be happy for what you do have. I mean, there are people who are dying, who would love to swap places with you, who are just like, they don't have arms and so forth. And I mean, I know people quite recently before I didn't, and that might happen to you very quickly, who just out of the blue have gotten cancer that has a low chance of curing them. And what that means is pretty much like someone telling you that you're going to die regardless in just a few years, or just a couple years, or just 1 or 2 years or 3 years. That's going to suck. I mean, that can change your whole life. That can change how you think about other stuff and so forth. And I mean, yeah, that's all I gotta say. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. And the last thing I do want to mention real quickly, if anyone's actually watched this whole thing, is I do want to mention like suicide and so forth. That's something I've talked about and so forth. I do think that one thing you guys should think about is, if you're considering it, like, just realize that life is so short anyways, and there's bound to be stuff that you enjoy, that you're happy about, and it may just be like a small moment or a burst. And I'm not talking drugs or something stupid like crack cocaine or something like that. There are probably moments that you've forgotten about where you enjoyed, and they're quite amazing, and it was awesome. And those are worth living, because life is so short anyways. Like, if you take your life so soon, like, quite honestly, like, life can be very short. I mean, there are people who get cancer in their 20s out of the blue and then die. And then there's people who get some illness and die in their teenage years, like 18, 15, and they're told they only have this amount of time to live, and they treasure every moment of it. So life can be very short, and even if you lived to 60 or 80, I mean, that's still quite short on the lifespan of the earth. That's a very short time, and it can go very fast. I mean, for me, I mean, it probably is. I mean, right now I feel very young, but you know, this could be one moment, and then you blink your eyes, and now I'm an old man watching the replay of this video on YouTube, and I'm probably thinking to myself, wow, how has time passed so quickly? I remember the day when I was 21 years old and I was making this stupid video and posting it onto YouTube, and now look how old I am. Man, time sure does fly. So life is so short anyways. Why just take yourself out so early on? Why not spend a little more extra time? Because even if there's a lot of bad, there's going to be a few moments of good, and that's better than just ending it sooner, because it's so short anyways. That's all I gotta say. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Peace.